In this episode of the Design Tours, I traveled to Mendocino County in Northern California to explore its stunning scenery of cliff-rimmed Pacific coastline and towering redwood forests. This is a trip to unplug and reconnect with Mother Nature in a blessed and beautiful place. I flew into the San Francisco airport and rented a car to make the 2.5-hour drive north. It's an ideal and intimate introduction to the stunning topography as it unfolds driving along the coastline through fog banks and redwood forest. We take the scenic Highway 128, winding through pastures, vineyards, and orchards. Once you arrive, you'll discover a rare place barely touched by development. Mendocino County is home to former logging towns. Logging was once the economic lifeblood of the area, and it attracted settlers who came to harvest the plentiful redwood trees. In its heyday, the area literally fueled San Francisco, providing firewood for its residents. Today, the local economy thrives from tourism, winemaking, and cannabis farming. Locals here are closely tied to the land and proud defenders of its natural beauty, which leads me to the inn at Newport Ranch, a 2,000-acre preserve with a 10-room inn. It's the vision of one man who saw a classified ad in the Wall Street Journal in the mid-'80s for the property once owned by a logging company. We'll learn more about the owner later, but first, let's check in and explore the property. Headed out on a UTV tour to get the lay of the land here at the inn at Newport Ranch with my tour guide, Otis, who is a lifelong resident of the area. So he's going to tell us all about the history of the property, its topography, all of its natural attributes, and some really inside stories along the way. You ready, Otis?
I am ready.
Let's do it.
This was actually the site of a Victorian-era logging town called Newport. And it was here between 1860 till about 1900. At its peak, over 2,000 people actually lived here. It was actually one of the earliest and largest communities on California's West Coast. Now, not much remains of that town. Time, erosion, fire, they've all had their due. A few things do remain. One of them is this beautiful Monterey cypress tree, which we have just right out in front of the lodge here. We love it dearly. It's our logo. Look at pictures 80 years ago. It looks almost exactly the same. It's like a giant bonsai that's found its shape.
Newport was a logging and timber town, as was much of the area along this stretch of the Pacific coast. We make our way to the Council Bluffs. It's a popular spot for events and wedding ceremonies. As I look out to the ocean, I see a large rock. Otis tells me it's called Kilabasaya, named after a neighboring community that was another former logging town. Suddenly, Otis spots a carved projectile laid bare in the soil. He tells me it was left by the Yuki Indians, the indigenous people who once inhabited this area long ago.
If you have a sharp eye and you look around through these middens here, you might chance upon an arrowhead, an artifact looking around here. In fact, we're in luck today. Coming up from this gopher, I see a little, yeah, check it out, it's a little projectile point.
Oh my gosh, look at that.
Thousands of years old. Now that stone isn't native to this area. The Yuki were actually masters of trade, but they would not let other tribes forage on the seashore here. In fact, the material for that stone is chert. It's probably from the Eel River Canyon, about 50 miles from here. Unfortunately, today, not one Yuki exists. Coastal Yuki, they're an extinct people. Very common in U.S. history. Now, less common, the U.S. government actually made attempts to save these people, and that's actually the history of the small community south of here, Fort Bragg. Mid-1800s, this whole reservation is, this whole North Coast is a large reservation. And it's home to numerous indigenous groups like the Coastal Yuki, Sinkyone, Wailaki, Northern Pomo. Unfortunately for these people, the California gold rush happens. San Francisco starts growing by leaps and bounds, very natural resource hungry. So people make incursions onto native land to log the redwood, or worse yet, enslave the population. Now, the U.S. government erects Fort Bragg just south of here to defend the reservation. Very not typical in American history of that.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. It was usually to suppress native peoples. But in this case, it was to protect this reservation. Now, for a few years, things worked out great for the Yuki. They had good trade with the fort. They lived their life here as they always did. Unfortunately, the American Civil War broke out. Fort's disbanded, everyone goes to fight, and within 5 years, not one Yuki's left alive.
Fort Bragg remains today as a town, just 20 minutes north, with its own authentic attractions that we will explore in another episode. All right, so I told you when we started this tour we were going to get some insider information. Otis has taken me to Secret Beach. Tell me about Secret Beach, Otis.
So Secret Beach is a gorgeous little cove here on the north side of the property. As you can see out here, really beautiful water, great visibility, super fertile ocean out here. Over 150 different species of marine algae here. Some of them we actually utilize around here. Over there at the lip of that cave are sea palm. Locally, we make a delicious spicy pickle out of it. My wife's an herbalist. She'll forage this light green seaweed on the top of the rock. Since it's so high up in the tide cycle, it's exposed to a lot of sunlight, naturally rich in sunscreen compounds. She actually makes an organic sunscreen out of it. Now in the future, we'd love to get access to this beach so our guests can utilize it for sunbathing, picnics, kayaking. A perfect spot for a kayak, very little beach break. You can explore the North Cove through that pass there. This sea cave goes due west through the Fingers, so you could actually go through that. And if you look behind you and you wanted to explore the South Cove, take a look at this. Great little sea arch there. Now this is all gray wacky sandstone, highly erosive, and that's why we have these features.
This stretch of coastline is the perfect place for whale watching, especially during the months of November and February when whales migrate. During this time, thousands of whales travel past this stretch of coast. They're drawn to the nutrient-rich waters and the cliff faces where they rub off their barnacles. Now, locals say you can tell when the whales are close to shore by the smell of whale breath. It's a fish emulsion scent carried by the wind. The inn resides on a working cattle ranch with 300 grass-fed cattle, including Black Angus bulls. The region's plentiful rainfall, up to 60 inches in the springtime, creates a blanket of emerald green grass to sustain the cattle. Now, every morning, I wake up to birds chirping and cowbells ringing, and I think, what a charming wake-up call. Well, Otis tells me there's a backstory to those adorable cowbells.
A belled cow is a bad cow. Yes, those are the cows that go, so everything you can see as part of this property, these are the cows that do not want to be a genteel bovine and stick to the grassland. These are the ladies who want to tear off into the woods. So once they're recaptured, they are belled.
Passing through the cattle ranch, we head into the property's redwood forest.
Something you'll notice though about our redwood forest here is all these trees tend to be growing in groups, and locally that's known as a fairy ring. And why that occurs is when you cut a redwood down, the first thing that's going to happen, it's going to shoot new growth out of its root mass and stump. Every tree in the group, they're all sister trees, they're all clones, genetically identical. That fact, you really don't have to replant a redwood forest. It tends to do it after logging. So that's the nice thing about redwoods. In fact, redwoods grow so readily here. If I were to cut a piece of redwood firewood off a living tree and leave it on the forest floor for a season, roots will actually come out of it and it'll sprout a tree out of that piece of firewood.
Redwoods thrive in northern coastal California because they draw nourishment from the fog. Each tree can absorb up to 500 gallons of water daily from fog. Now, some of that moisture drips onto the forest floor as precipitation, creating a rainforest-like climate. As we hike the forest, Otis leads me to a massive redwood stump. So this is a springboard that the lumberjacks used to cut this redwood tree down. And this dates back to about 1900, Otis tells us. And it's a fascinating story of all the work and the systematic approach that went into actually chopping down and harvesting the redwood tree.
Now, a team of 7 to a dozen men would attempt to fall this tree, and it would take anywhere from 3 days to 1 week. Now, first thing they're going to do is set their springboards. Now, we're really lucky. We have not 1, but 2 springboards still stuck in this tree from, we theorize this tree was cut down around 1900. So they've been here a little bit. Now, these went all the way around the tree, and then the men would lay redwood planks in between them, and it provide sort of a scaffolding to cut this giant tree. So we get our springboard set. Now we're going to make our pie-shaped undercut, and that was done on this side of the tree, and that was achieved with double bit axe, locally called a Humboldt cut. Its purpose was to hopefully dictate which way this giant would fall. So we get our undercut set. Now we start in on our back cut, and to achieve that, we're going to use a 2-man crosscut saw. As the back cut progresses, other lumberjacks will drive wooden wedges in. This much mass generates tremendous kinetic energy and actually has a tendency to explode on impact. Things they could do to mitigate that. One, like these guys did, you want to fall the tree uphill. Less force is developed, less energy, more likely to stay intact.
Much of the redwood timber was harvested for firewood and railroad ties. I say goodbye to the redwood forest by doing my part to foster its growth. I'm going to plant this little redwood tree, and it's one of thousands that are planted on the property in a year. And I'm told that if I come back and visit this little tree in about 20 years, it's going to be as tall as that one behind me. So here we go. We shall call her the Karen tree. The property's symbiotic relationship with nature protects and preserves many native plants, including this rare flower known as farewell to spring.
So right here we have gorgeous Clarkia Whitney, a beautiful summertime wildflower that I will tell you is only found at this point on this property. There's 4 little populations that live on this ridgetop. It's also called Farewell to Spring. It's one of the last wildflowers to bloom in the area. We'll protect you and continue to keep growing on this beautiful mountain.
Before heading back to the inn, we stop for a bird's eye view at the top of a bluff. Well, Otis, thank you so much for taking us around the property. This has been fascinating, and it's been incredibly moving to learn so much about the land and to experience your passion for the place. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Karen. It was absolutely my pleasure, and I do hope to see you out here at the ranch again sometime.
All right, so fist bump. So Otis's wife, Felicia, also works on the property. She is an organic gardener, cultivating ingredients that are served up farm to table in the restaurant here on the property. So she's going to take us on a tour of her garden.
We grow as much as we can for the inside dinners, lots of greens. We have many types of lettuces that we grow, carrots, kales, chicories, radicchios. The greens grow great here. With this cool ocean air, we can grow pretty much all year round. The ocean here is kind of like a desert to the bees. So whatever I can do to bring the bees in, I try to do. So lots of edible flowers and flowers that I know that the bumblebees like.
The cool thing about this garden is that the guest at the inn can walk through the garden.
Of
You
course.
actually encourage it, right?
Yes, we love that. And in fact, you can even sample what you like. If you want to take some lettuce and make a little salad in your room, you're welcome to. And the owner is really great. He could have had this all straight lines, you walk in real quick, but he's like, why don't we make it slow so you have to meander through? So I just love that. I mean, it could have been really boring, but
Right.
just like inside the inn, his designs you can see everywhere. Just the little touches, yes.
So it does. It invites you to meander
And slowly walk through.
through the garden.
And of course, one of his benches, he even has one over here, so if you want to sit down and watch the bees and the plants grow, you can.
The garden is one of many blissful places on the property. Next, I head out for a hike to soak up the scenery. I'm making my way down the steps to the edge of the cliff so I can get an up-close look at the Pacific Ocean. And I love the way the property invites you to have intimate encounters with its natural beauty. Another way you can do this is throughout the property, the owner has installed benches at scenic spots where you can sit and soak in the scenery and just appreciate the moment. Every element of the architecture, landscape, and property layout comes from the heart and mind of owner Will Jackson. He's committed to restoring this former logging site to its original beauty. So I am joined by Blair Foster. She is the GM of this gorgeous property. What a privileged job you have.
It is.
Come on.
It is an honor to be part of the stewardship. It really is, in all honesty.
Blair, we have thoroughly enjoyed our stay here.
Thank you.
And
That's our hope.
I really am curious about the owner of this property. I mean, what is his story? What motivated him to invest in this?
Will, the owner's name is Will Jackson, and I know him really well. He's 94 at this point, on the cusp of 95. He, in all honesty, is one of my best friends. I've known him a really long time. I've known him since I was a child. And he was in finance in New York. And while a lot of people gravitate towards art or fine food and wine and collections of some form or another, Will collects views. And he was eating his lunch at his desk, as he did every day, and reading the Wall Street Journal, and he found the first parcel in the classified section because he always scoured the land. And so that's in '84 he found the first parcel, and then he just kept on building. But I don't know any person that knows their land as well as Will. I mean, he knows every nook and cranny. He has climbed and crawled and scoured. He's always just looking for the best view.
I love this concept of a view collector, and it resonated with me throughout my stay. Will Jackson collects views to immerse visitors in the powerful and rejuvenating beauty of nature.
He is a land steward of a bygone era, but his entire mission and hope is to share this with others. And you know, that everything you're saying is exactly the reason he built it.
So for us, we were very much about being mindful and present in the moment, and life is so chaotic that this was a real treat just to come here and unplug and be fully present to life and beauty and nature. So he's done a great job fostering that experience for
I will
guests.
pass it on, because it is music to his ears,
Yes.
and it is a labor of love.
The inn connects visitors to its surrounding redwood forest through its design and architectural elements. Many features are crafted from fallen redwoods environmentally harvested, and vintage, repurposed objects and materials tied to the land and its history.
Everything we do here, we're trying to reflect, you know, kind of the bounty of Mendocino County, and, you know, be true to our origin and our roots of where we are. So a lot of the timber is from the property, and then everything else is local in some form or another. We have a quarry to the north, and so some of the rock came from that, and then otherwise it came from other quarries within Mendocino County. I think Will, in a different life, would not have been in finance, but he would have been an architect. And so his fingerprints are on almost every design aspect of this.
My visit to the inn at Newport Ranch connected me with the restorative power of nature, and I returned back to real life, rested, rejuvenated, and inspired by the land and the passion of the people who preserve it.
It's like pulsing with vitality and energy, and yet it's so soothing simultaneously. So it's a real paradox. It's powerful. You know, this land is powerful and magical, I believe.
And so I say goodbye to the inn at Newport Ranch, blessed by Mother Nature with an energy and an environment that invites you to unplug and be fully present. Until the Design Tourist travels again, stay curious and stay inspired.